Okay, so we are moving into the kind of discussion of the administrative parts of the course. So the main landing page for the course is the Blackboard site at courses.ccac.edu. And you can go here, you can log in with your same username and password you use for everything else for email or any of that. And when you navigate down to our course, you should come up with a page that looks something like this. Oh, there we go. So it'll pop you into the course homepage, looks something like this. And this is where a lot of the resources and so on for the course will be held and where announcements will be posted. So you should have gotten this welcome announcement to your email. So it has the Zoom link and some other information, and it's also posted here in the announcements tab on Blackboard. These announcements are kind of rolling in a sense, so they have end dates, so you won't, in a couple of days, you won't see this announcement anymore. And then when a new announcement is posted, you'll see that one. That way they don't kind of build up and just clutter up the screen. But if there's, if you get an announcement to your email, you might want to just pop it in a folder in case you want to refer back to it later. I posted some useful websites as well, so there are some CCAC resources you might find helpful. Some other third-party resources that might be good for, say, reviewing a topic. If you go through the course material and it's just not clicking, this might be another area that another resource that you can use. Khan Academy is pretty popular, but also some lesser known ones like MAT080 and Patrick JMT. They all have good resources. So if you're stuck on a particular topic, if you want a different point of view, those might be good resources to look at. And the YouTube playlist where I'll post the class recordings is at this link where it says here. You can just click that. That'll take you to the YouTube playlist, and you can either save it or you can subscribe and turn on notifications, whatever works for you. Oh, and I didn't change the semester there. But recordings will be uploaded typically within a day or two after the class meeting. It does take a little bit of time to process on Zoom's end until the recording's available, and then it takes a little bit of time for me to kind of do everything to get it up to YouTube and for that to process as well. Occasionally I have to, edit it a little bit or something like that if, students stayed after class to chat or whatever, those kind of things. So, but yeah, so within a day or two of class, you should see the recording pop up in that playlist. The Zoom tab has some basic information about Zoom. So if you're not super comfortable with Zoom, or if you can't get something to work, you can look through this explanation here, and it gives you a pretty quick crash course in how to use Zoom. Or you can go to the Zoom links tab. Our class meetings will be at this Zoom link, so you can use the same Zoom link that you used for today for all of our class meetings this semester. Meeting from 10:20 to 12 on Tuesday and Thursday. I also have office hours that are going to be on Zoom. Those will be Monday, Wednesday, 9 to 10 a.m. and Tuesday, Thursday, 12 to 1:30 p.m. So Tuesday, Thursday, just right after this class. Note that the Zoom meeting links for office hours are different than the class meeting links, and they're also different depending on what day. It's just an idiosyncrasy of how Zoom schedules meetings, that because they have kind of different meeting patterns, you can't schedule them all under the same link for the same meeting. So for the Monday, Wednesday office hours, use this link, and for Tuesday, Thursday, use this other link. And a quick note is, unfortunately, another idiosyncrasy of Zoom is that if I'm the only participant in a meeting, so if I start up a meeting and nobody else is in there, it will eventually force close the meeting on me. It'll just say your meeting has ended. And so that happens occasionally with office hours. If I have a meeting open and nobody's in there for a while, it might just close. If that happens, then when you go to join the meeting, it might come up with a screen that says something like, please wait for the host to start the meeting, something like that. just hold tight for a couple minutes. If that happens, it'll send me an email, and I'm always actively monitoring my email, especially during office hours. So I'll see that email pop up, and then and yeah, when I see that email, I'll know that I need to reopen the meeting, and then we can connect that way. Also, for office hours, the default is for you to go into the waiting room, and that's just so that if a student comes in to discuss something confidential, something about grades or something like that, nobody else is just going to randomly pop in. So it'll pop you into the waiting room, and then if I don't have anybody in the meeting, I'll just admit you right away. Or if I do have somebody that I'm discussing something with, I'll shoot you a quick message and just say, be with you in a few minutes, discussing something with a student right now. So yeah, so that's the Zoom information. Any questions on any of this material so far? Okay, we'll come back to the syllabus and course documents. A little bit of information about the textbook. Oh, I need to change the title there. I have the wrong title. But the textbook for the course is OpenStax Pre-Algebra. The link is the correct link, but I just have the incorrect title there. But the textbook is this OpenStax Pre-Algebra book, and you can use this link to get to it. Whoops, you can use this link to get to it. And you can either use it in the kind of website version, or you can download a PDF of the book if that works better for you. You want to email it to yourself and have it on your phone, something like that. That's an option too. It is an open educational resource, so you just go to this website and you have access to the book. However, this being a remote section especially, we need a way to manage homework and exams and so on. So we do use the WebAssign ancillary system for homework and exams, and that does require you to either buy access or to use an access code to get into it. We'll talk a little more about WebAssign in a couple minutes here, but you can also access the book through WebAssign. One note on WebAssign that I want to point out is if your financial aid is still kind of coming through or you don't have the access code yet, there is a 2-week free trial option, so you can get into the WebAssign system, create an account, start in the course material and all of that. You can do that all right away and not lose any time. You can start the homework, you can view any of the resources that are in there with that 2-week free trial while you get all the things sorted out on the back end. So just make sure that you're aware of that.
Where's the free, where's that at? How do you access that one?
So it's part of the WebAssign login. When you go to create an account, it'll be one of the options. And we'll look at that in a couple minutes. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that there is a 2-week free trial. And then just kind of a
So,
rehashing of some of the
so
information.
after that, you have to purchase it?
Yes, after the free trial, you have to purchase it. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So again, just a rehashing of some information we've already talked about. Note that the strongly preferred method of communication is email. I'm all remote this semester, so I have only Zoom and online classes. And my setup in my house works a lot better for me than my office. So I'm not in the office very much. So if you need to get in touch with me a different way, it's probably the better option is to send me an email, and then we can arrange a different method of communication, or you can call our faculty secretary or call one of the campuses and ask them to reach out to me. Okay, so let's jump up to the syllabus. We'll go through some information in the syllabus, and then we'll kind of transition to WebAssign. We'll discuss some information about WebAssign and talk about the WebAssign system. Oops. All right, so there's 3 documents in the syllabus folder, and the first one is kind of the syllabus proper. So the first page here mainly just boilerplate. It's just kind of some stuff that we have to have in the syllabus. It says what we're going to be covering in the course, some details about how many credits, that kind of thing. Note that we meet Tuesday and Thursday, 10:20 to noon on Zoom. And one thing that's important to note, and this kind of applies to all of your classes, is if you look at your registration documents or you look in the CCAC catalog or anything like that, the end date of the course is going to be listed as the last class meeting day. So the end date of the course doesn't take into account final exam week. And they do that in our internal systems for room scheduling purposes, really. Um, but just make sure that whatever class you're in, you know when the final exam is scheduled for, and you don't plan any travel or anything like that, for that week until you know when your final exams are. So our exams will all be taken online through the WebAssign system. So they're flexible as to when you can take them. You don't have to take them during class time. Um, and each exam will be available for roughly a week, and you can kind of take it anywhere within that window. So the final exam week technically is Tuesday the 10th through the following Monday. And then with that Tuesday, the Tuesday a week after the 10th being a makeup day. So if we had a snow day or something like that, that would be a makeup day for that. Our final exam will be available a little earlier than that. We'll discuss that in a couple minutes here, but just note that the final exam week is kind of roughly the week of December 9th. So again, make sure that you don't schedule any travel or anything like that for that week as well. They require text, OpenStack's pre-algebra by Marichek, and some other required materials. Just making sure that you have access to and that you regularly check your CCAC academic email and the Blackboard account. Again, when I post announcements to Blackboard, they should go to your email, but it's best to just kind of check both of those. I mean, I say here at least once per business day, but I would say email at least once each day, and then Blackboard, you know, maybe on class days or something like that. But make sure that you're regularly checking in with both of these accounts, Blackboard and your email. Also, of course, with this being a Zoom section, having reliable access to a computer with a webcam, reliable internet, microphone, things like that to connect to uh, the Zoom class meetings. There's always a little bit of, technology issues throughout the semester or getting things kicked off, so no big deal if something doesn't work for a particular day, but make sure that in general you're able to connect to and participate in the class meetings. And then lastly, as we've mentioned a couple of times, access to the WebAssign homework site, which we'll talk about a little more in a couple minutes here. And I think it's also important to note the resources that are available to you as part of your tuition dollars, as part of you being a CCAC student. If at any time you have questions or concerns about the course or the material, anything like that, your first option would be just to get in touch with me. Either pop into office hours, ask during class. Typically at the beginning of each class, I'll ask if there are any questions on material we had covered previously or any homework or anything, or shoot me an email. You can also message me through the WebAssign site, so email or message. You can also consider, maybe setting up a group of students that you can, study with, a study group, a work group, something like that. You can reach out to the LAC, the Learning Assistance Center. They have one-on-one individual tutoring, and they also are located near the Math Cafe, which has walk-in group tutoring. So those are both great resources. All of that tutoring is free. And then, of course, there's also the math websites that I mentioned on the useful websites tab. So for instance, Math TV, Khan Academy, Patrick JMT. There's some other ones as well. Like some people like the Purple Math, I think it's called, website for just kind of a quick kind of text-based review and a couple examples if you just want a quick overview of something. So there's lots of resources out there. as far as the grading scheme for the course, whoops, having trouble selecting all of it. There we go. As far as the grading scheme for the course, homework is worth 40% of the course grade. We'll have 3 unit exams that combined are worth 30% of the course grade, so they're worth 10% each. And we'll have a final exam that'll be comprehensive. It'll cover all of the material from the course, and it's worth 30% of the course grade. Note that I do round up. Are the links for the math tools in Blackboard? Yes. So in the useful websites tab, if this is what you're referring to, yeah, these links are in the useful websites tab. Yep. Note that I do round up, so I don't see the point in quibbling about, 0.1 or 0.2 percentage points. So for instance, a grade of 89.1% would round up to 90% for an A. Just a quick note about emails. So when you email me, please allow me 1 business or school day, 24 business or school hours to give you a response. I do try to get back to emails pretty quickly, but that's the standard that I hold myself to is 24 hours. But that also means that, say, if a homework is due on Sunday, if you wait until Friday afternoon or evening to email me, I might not get back to you till Monday. I do typically try to answer emails on weekends as well, um, but I don't hold myself to that standard. That being said, if you did email me and you haven't gotten a response back, occasionally student emails, from time to time will slip past me. I get a lot of administrative emails and just general CCAC emails. So if one has slipped past me, I'd much prefer that you send me a reminder. Just pop that email back to the top of my inbox and give me a chance to get back to it. And I'd much rather prefer that than missing one of your emails. So if you don't hear from me within that 24-hour time frame, just shoot me a reminder and I'll get back to you. One quick note on that applies to Math 80 and Math 90 is the college policy is that a D grade is not considered passing to progress to the next course. So for Math 080 and Math 090, you need a C or better to progress to the next one. So to pass 80 and move on to 90, you need a C or better. Just an important note. Usually a D is sufficient, usually not ideal to move to the next course, but usually that's enough. But in these classes, you need a C or better. So a quick note on academic misconduct or cheating. So first off, don't cheat in the course. It's not worth it. If you get caught, it's a huge hassle. And you're not learning the material that's going to set you up for success for future math courses. Just a clarification on the expectations regarding cheating. So anytime that you're submitting work for a grade that's not your work, that's considered cheating. So that could be something like having somebody else do your work for you, but that could also be something like going to ChatGPT or something, or going to Photomath and having those resources do the work for you. In both cases, that would be considered cheating. That's considered, having a computer do the work for you is essentially the same as having another person do the work for you. There's not a good way to enforce this with homework. So, students, I suppose, could use those resources on their homework, but I strongly recommend you don't, because the exams will be proctored with ProctorU. So those resources won't be available on the exams, and there will be an accountability system in place on the exams. And if you're using these resources during the homeworks, I mean, maybe that boosts your homework grade a little bit, but your exam grade is going to suffer pretty significantly because you're not going to be learning the material very well. And then when you come up against the problem on the exam, you're not going to have that practice of working through the material on your own, and you won't have the resource to back you up. So, do do the homework honestly, and if you come up against a problem, try to struggle through it a little bit. That's where most of the learning happens. If you really get stymied, then shoot me an email, ask me for help, or send me a WebAssign message. And I'm happy to help, or ask in class, or whatever it may be. Any questions up to this point? Okay, so couple of details that pertain to this being a remote course. I'll pick out the kind of highlights here. One of the main things is there will be 4 exams. There are 3 unit exams and 1 final exam. And note that each exam will be, as I mentioned, posted and available for about 1 week. So that gives you a pretty good window to take the exam. However, note that because they're available for a full week, and they can be taken anytime in that week, uh, due date extensions are not available. So if you miss an exam, if you come to me the week after the exam and say, "Oh, I missed that exam, can I make it up?" The answer is going to be no. Also, don't wait until the last day to take the exam. If there's an exam due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. and you plan to take that exam at Sunday at 8 p.m. when it's been open for a full week, you're really taking a pretty big risk with a big chunk of your grade, right? If you have a power outage or your computer crashes or whatever happens that day that you're not able to take the exam, again, there are no exam makeups. So I would strongly recommend building in a decent buffer. If an exam is due Sunday, maybe plan to take it Thursday. That way, if something goes wrong, you have a few days to work out an alternative solution. Maybe if your internet goes down, you can go to a local library or to a CCAC campus and use that internet. Or if you have a tech problem, maybe you can get access to a different computer. So again, don't wait until the last day to take the exam. I would suggest not even waiting until the last 2 or 3 days. Build yourself in a little bit of a buffer.
How will you know if the exam will be there? Are you going to tell us?
Sorry.
So how will you know that exam going to be there?
Oh, yeah. There's a course schedule at the end of the syllabus. Yep. So all of the exams are posted on here. But the last detail about exams is you might be familiar with Examity or ProctorU or similar systems. We used to use Examity for our proctoring service. We're switching to ProctorU this semester, but it basically works the same way as Examity. So the exams will be proctored with ProctorU. And basically the way that works is you log into ProctorU, you enable screen sharing so that ProctorU can kind of record what's on your screen. You also enable your webcam and microphone, and then go on to WebAssign, take the test just as you would. You can just ignore ProctorU after that at that point. Go through, take the test, submit the test, and then close out the ProctorU session. So, other than a little bit of setup on the front end and a little bit of closing out the session and so on the back end, you can basically just take the exam as though ProctorU is not even there. And then all it does is it just saves a recording to their server. And that's the proctoring system. So it's, very non-invasive. It's not a big hassle. It's not a live proctoring system. So there's not going to be a person on the other end like talking to you or bugging you or anything like that. Just a little bit of setup on the front end, a little bit of close down on the back end of the exam. And other than that, you can kind of more or less ignore it. Okay, so a couple more kind of quick notes. If you miss a class meeting for whatever reason, not a problem. Again, the recordings are posted, but it is your responsibility to be prepared for whatever material might have been discussed in that class. So that might mean, say, an upcoming assignment, or if there's an exam the following week, making sure that you're aware of that. So if you miss a class meeting, make sure to watch the recording, but also make sure that you're aware of what was going on that week in the class. The due dates typically are on Sundays at 11:59 p.m., with the exception of the last week of class, whenever the due date's on Friday. So there are no extension requests for exams. However, for homeworks, that's a different story. For homeworks, you have 3 extension requests throughout the course, and those requests will be for an entire week's worth of homework, and it will extend the due date for 1 full week. So if you have a super busy week, you can email me, after that homework is due, and you can say, hey, can I use an extension for last week's homework? And I'll just extend all of the homework sets that were part of last week's homework forward for 1 week. Note that it is only 1 week from the original due date. So if you email me, 3 weeks later and say, hey, can I go back and make up this homework? At that point, it's past that 1 extra week. And at that point, it would be better for you to kind of look forward and focus on the future work instead of going that far back. So there's a couple examples here, and again, you get up to 3 of those requests throughout the course. One of I think the most important things about a math course, to be successful in a math course, is really to stay on track, to not get behind, to be really diligent about kind of touching base with the material several times per week. I would recommend, every day, Monday through Friday, just doing a little bit every day. That's much better than trying to kind of put it off until the last minute and then cram it all into a couple hours on Sunday or something like that. That's an easy way to fall behind or to create more difficulty than there really needs to be. So I think the most important thing for success in a course like this is just, again, being diligent about that, touching base with the material at least, once a day from Monday through Friday, and making sure that you don't fall behind. And then, as I've kind of mentioned already, that the exams are required to be taken when they're scheduled, and there are no due date extensions on exams, no makeups on exams. And at the end of our syllabus document, we have the course schedule, which is a rough outline of what we're planning to cover each day. We probably won't actually get to the section 1.1 material today, but we'll kind of start the introduction to the course today, and then knock out 1.1 through 1.3 on Thursday. And we have Unit 1 exam is scheduled for the week of Monday 9/23 to Sunday 9/29. The Unit 2 exam 10/28 to 11/3. The Unit 3 exam 12/2 to 12/8. And the final exam, again, posted a little bit before final exam week technically starts, so it'll be available on Friday, December 6th, and go through Friday, December 13th. And just kind of a side note, because the final exam is outside of class time, it's just open for whatever day or time works best for you. We contractually have to do something during final exam week. So what I offer is just an optional final review session that'll be Tuesday, 10:30 to 12:30. If you have any questions about any topics or about the exam or anything, you can feel free to pop in. But if you're happy with where you're at in the material, or if you've already completed the final exam at that point, this is an optional meeting. You don't have to attend. Are there any questions on anything from the syllabus? Anything we've discussed so far?
How do I get the paper? Like when is the homework? I mean, when is the test due and stuff like that?
Yeah. So the tests will be on WebAssign.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we'll jump over to WebAssign in just a minute here. Okay, so a couple other details about the syllabus tab. So the other document, well, one of the other documents in the syllabus tab is this workflow pointers document. And I think this is a really important document, especially if you're maybe a first-time college student, or and especially for remote or online courses. It can be kind of difficult to keep up with the work and to kind of maintain that structure. You know, if you're coming straight from high school, there's a lot more structure to high school courses and a little less structure, a lot more independent learning expected in a college course. And that's even more so in a remote course. Um, you know, in some ways, it seems like a remote course should be basically just the same as an on-campus course. You know, we're just meeting in a different modality, but we're still meeting twice a week and so on. But it does seem that even in a Zoom course, this remote modality, maybe there's a little more separation or something, and it seems that it's a little bit more difficult to keep on track. So I would recommend reading through this document and really taking the ideas to heart. Um, you know, I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but particularly the idea that you want to be prepared for each class session. So you want to look ahead at, okay, what are we going to be doing on Thursday, or what are we going to be doing next Tuesday? Read through the material in the book, maybe go through a couple of practice problems before the class meeting, and then you're well prepared for the class meeting. And then after the class meeting, going and looking at WebAssign, doing some of the homework and so on, and really just trying to, you know, plan your week out, plan to do something each day related to the course. And that really just keeps it a lot fresher in your head. It gives you the ability to look at a problem. Maybe you're struggling with a topic, you know, if you're working on that topic on Wednesday, you can put that down, come back to it on Friday or something. You've had, you know, a little bit of time to rest or to think about it or let it settle in. Where again, if you know, kind of wait until, you know, Sunday night to start your homework, you don't have that luxury. So I think this lays out a pretty good strategy for, you know, for working through the course. And then also this workload expectations, note down here. So a typical student would expect to spend somewhere between 8 and 16 hours per week. Um, with the material. So that would include our Zoom class meetings, maybe any studying, any pre-reading, reading of the textbook, rewriting notes, you know, working on homework, completing exams, all of that stuff. So it is a pretty significant time investment. You know, if you're taking, say, 4 courses, you know, if you say a course uses, say, roughly 10 hours per week of effort, 4 courses is like 40 hours a week, like a full-time job, right? If you're taking 6 courses, that's like 60 hours a week. That's, you know, 1.5 full-time jobs. So just be aware of the time commitment and time expectation for the course. And then there's also some CCAC boilerplate. These are just all of the things that the college wants us to put in our syllabus. I kind of put it in a third document here just to keep the different sections separated. So things like accommodations for students with disabilities, things like our Title IX policy, all of these kind of things that mostly speak to your rights as students. This is very important information. Again, I would recommend that you read through it carefully, and you know, that you make sure you understand all of this material. All right, any questions on the syllabus before we talk about WebAssign?
I do have just one quick question.
Sure.
As far as like homework to like the work or the flow of the week,
Mhm.
like whenever we're in class, or is, is it better to just like wait for lectures instead of like moving forward, if that makes a sense? It makes any sense?
Yeah. So something like this is kind of the typical outline that I would, you know, kind of as a baseline recommend for a week. Now, of course, I mean, everybody's schedule is a little bit different, so it might look a little bit different for different folks. But
Mhm.
for instance, you know, if we have, um, uh, well, I kind of mentioned up here, it's a continuation off of this idea. But if we have on Tuesday, we're covering, say, sections 1.4 to 1.5 in week 2,
Mhm.
then maybe pre-reading that, either Monday or the weekend before or the week before. Practice a couple problems from the book, maybe work through some examples that are in the text and make sure that, you have a general idea of what's going on in those sections. And then
Mhm.
we'll cover that in the class. And then maybe, the next day or after class, you would make the first attempt at the homework.
Okay.
Now, personally, I like to think of homework as an assessment of your understanding of the material. So if the way that some folks will approach homework is like, all right, look at problem one. I don't know how to do that. So I'll go over to the book, try to find a problem that's kind of like that, and then basically struggle my way through problem one. Okay, I got it right. And then go to problem
Mhm.
two. And that, so if you're doing that, you're not learning very much. Right. It's more like it's making way too much use of, say, the textbook or other work.
Right.
I certainly wouldn't call that cheating, but it's not the best way to go about it. But if you attend class, if you work through the textbook, if you do some practice problems on your own and you say, okay, I think I have a pretty good grasp of this material, then you go to the homework and you try to work through it. What the homework does is it gives you an independent assessment of how well you understand that material. If you're able to do most of the homework problems and get them right, say the first time, or maybe you make a small mistake here or there, but you kind of understand the mistakes and you can correct them, that's a really good sign. If you go over to the homework and you're like, okay, out of these 15 problems, I was able to get 3 of them, and you know, 7 of them I had no idea even where to start, then maybe you don't understand the material as well as you maybe had initially thought.
Mhm.
And that might be an indicator that you want to go back to the textbook, maybe rewatch the lecture video, um, look at some ancillary website, something like that, to really get a better understanding of that material, and then come back to the homework and see if that kind of has remediated things. That's how I think that homework can be used in the best way. Um, but again, there's always going to be there's a spectrum from the one way to the other way. So
Right.
there is some trade-off there, of course. But yeah. So I don't know if that kind of roughly answers your question or
Oh, no, you did.
okay. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And as an aside, the same could be said of the exams. For the exams, I'll post the sample exam about a week ahead of time. And again, you could look at the sample exam and say, okay, here's problem one. How do I do problem one? Here's problem two. How do I do problem two? But I think the better way to use a sample exam is to say, when you feel prepared for the exam, then sit down and take the whole sample exam and see how that goes. If the sample exam goes well, then you're probably well prepared for the actual exam. But if the sample exam is quite a bit of a struggle and you didn't do as well in the sample exam as you would have hoped, maybe that will point out some areas that you can go back, take a look at, review, and then come back and do the sample exam again and see if that has, made it go a little more smoothly. Okay, jumping down now to our last folder in Blackboard course documents. In here, there's 3 documents. One of these is this bookstore print on receipt code instructions. So if you buy the access code from the bookstore, they will typically give you a receipt with a code on it, but it's not actually the code for WebAssign, it's a code for the bookstore's website. It's a little confusing, so I just kind of scanned their instructions here, and basically you do you take the code that's on the receipt, you go to the bookstore's website, and you input the code there, and then it gives you a code for WebAssign, and you use that code to log into WebAssign. A little bit confusing, but it solves a couple of huge logistical problems. So it is kind of worth going through this extra step. It makes sure, basically the whole reason for this system is it just makes sure that um, that the code that you're getting for WebAssign goes to our book. It makes sure that everything works out with those logistics. It used to be that codes, if you had a code for WebAssign, you just got into WebAssign for one semester and that was that. But now all the codes are publisher and book specific and all of that. So this just, having them all done virtually like this, just make sure that all of the logistics on the back end work out right. and everything goes smoothly. So it is an extra step. It's a little bit annoying, but there is a good reason for it. So to get onto the WebAssign system, you can go to the WebAssign registration instructions. Occasionally these don't work. So occasionally a student will have an issue logging in or something. So I've posted a pretty similar but slightly different set of alternative instructions in case the first set doesn't work too well for you. But this is the main WebAssign registration instructions. You can basically go through the enroll in your class here, create an account if you don't have one already, sign in. The class key for our class that, if I can select it here, it's not letting me select it, but in red up on the top right, the class key, this whole thing, ccac.cc.pa space 7262 space 9051. That's our class key that when you go to WebAssign, it'll ask you to enter it. You put that in, and that will link you to this course. So WebAssign is this system. It's a Cengage product. Cengage is the publisher, and WebAssign is one of their products, their online system. Oops, wrong one. And when you log into WebAssign, again, remember you have the 2-week free trial option. So you can create an account, you can log in, even if your financial aid and stuff is still kind of in the works, you can get in here and get started on anything that's posted. And when you log in, you should see a screen like this. So for this first, day or so, we're really focusing on the administrative stuff. So things like making sure that we can log on to Blackboard, that we can get into the Zoom meetings, that, we've read through the syllabus and the course schedule and the workflow pointers and all of that. And also that we've logged on to WebAssign, kind of got an account set up, gotten into the system and all of that. So there are no homeworks posted at the moment. In the next day or so, I'll put a couple of homework sets up, and you'll see some homeworks listed under here for the first couple sections of the course. They won't be due for a week or so. There will be some other resources posted, but you can also get to the textbook through here. So you don't have to remember that the OpenStax, the name of it or anything, or you don't have to have that link. You can just go down here, click on the textbook, and it'll bring the text up for you. You can go through the table of contents, jump to whatever chapter and section you would like. So again, the textbook is an open educational resource, so access to the textbook itself is free. But because we need a system that can kind of mediate all of the homework, assignment and completion and remission and all of that, as well as the exams, that's really where WebAssign comes in. So WebAssign is a paid product. So kind of in lieu of buying a textbook, you're buying access to WebAssign, but you get, the textbook for free. So that makes, hopefully kind of offset some of that cost. I want to say, I think it's somewhere in the ballpark of $40 or $50 or so for the WebAssign access. So we got a pretty competitive price for access to the system. And then you can check your grades on here as well, because all of the grades, all of the material for the course that contributes to the course grade is on WebAssign. So specifically the homeworks and the 4 exams, that's all that contributes to the course grade. That's all on WebAssign. So you can go to your grade book up here under grades, and you can see an estimate of your current grade that kind of factors in the homeworks that you've completed as well as any exams that you've completed. So you can check on that anytime. Just kind of as a side note, I don't put grades in Blackboard because, again, everything for my remote and online courses is handled in WebAssign or in whatever online ancillary we have. So it's easier to just keep everything over here. Everything updates immediately. Everything is kind of, live updated. So you can check your grade anytime you want. I mean, of course, right now I have 0. I have an F in the course because I haven't done anything. Nothing's been assigned, but Once you get a month or so into the class, if you want to kind of see how things are progressing, you can check up here in the grade book. There's also the communication center. This is where you can send messages and so on at a point whenever some assignments and things have been posted. So when I post a couple assignments, when we come back on Thursday, I'll pop into here again and kind of show you around a little bit more. But again, really the focus for this first day is getting this kind of administrative and logistical stuff all sorted out. So making sure that, you can get into the Zoom meeting and that it's working, that you know where the syllabus and all of that material is on Blackboard, and importantly, just getting into WebAssign, creating an account, getting logged into the course, and if any tech issues come up, kind of sorting those out this first week. And that way you're ready to go for the rest of the course. And I think I mentioned already, but both the homeworks and the exams will be posted here. So when we have an exam week, the sample exam will be available under my assignments the week or so before the exam goes live, and then the exam will go live. It will also be under this My Assignments tab. Okay, so I think that basically wraps up what I wanted to talk about from the administrative side of things. Are there any questions on anything that I have covered or that I've not covered?
Excuse me, sir.
Yep.
When we make a website when we make an account, we need to pay every month or just pay for first time for applying?
Yes, just pay one time. Yeah. So you pay for the access code one time at the beginning of the semester, and it's good for that whole semester. Yep.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Sure.
I do have a question to sub her question. If we were to take a class or like a semester for you, like specifically you again, would you be using WebAssign? And if that was the case, would we be able to use the same code from the semester? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So the way that WebAssign's access work is it goes by textbook. And because the textbook changes, so like if you make it through 80 and you were to take 90 in the spring, it would be a different textbook. So you would need to do a different, you need to buy access to
Okay.
WebAssign again for that new textbook.
Okay.
In the, if you run into an event, sometimes students have a work change or something like that, they need to pull out of a section. So if something like that happened and you were to take 080 again in the spring, as long as it was using this textbook, you should be able to
Use it again.
move that access over to spring and not have to pay again. And if you
Okay.
did do that and as long as it was the same textbook, if you had trouble doing that, reach out to your faculty member, whether it's me or somebody else. And, we can reach out to the rep on your behalf and they can make that stuff work out whenever, sometimes that kind of thing gets a little bit glitchy, but the reps can kind of smooth things over with that. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, great
Thank you.
question though. Yeah, the way we used to do it was we had one big textbook that actually covered all three courses, 80, 90, and 108. So you'd kind of buy access once at the beginning.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Like, would we be
Yeah.
able to just keep the same one and then just use it as long as we have the same professor? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we used to do it like that, but the thing is it was more expensive on the front end. And some students would get through and say, that, this isn't the direction I want to go, or I don't want to take 108, I want to take 106 instead,
Okay.
or maybe a student would come in and test into 108 and they would have to pay for that whole access to all three courses. So we kind of chopped it up this way to make each semester a little bit more affordable.
Right.
Yeah, and then that also gives folks more options too. If you want to go to a
Decide to
different
change.
campus, some of
Mhm.
the different campuses use different textbooks. So yeah, it gives a
Okay.
little more flexibility. And it's just not so much of an expense all at once.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah, I think one thing to point out, I'll probably point this out on Thursday as well, but with this with these online systems, one of the super nice benefits is that it closes the feedback loop immediately. So instead of you think typical paper and pencil homework is what a lot of people think of when they think of math. Maybe not so much anymore. I think a lot of places are going to online homework like this, but if you think of paper and pencil homework, by the time that we cover the material in class, I assign the homework, you complete it, you hand it in, I grade and give it back to you. It's probably about a week and a half after we originally covered the material. And if you did, several problems incorrectly, have kind of ingrained the wrong way to do it. And now you get the homework back, you got a bad grade. And so that's kind of disappointing to start with, but then you have to go back a week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever, into the material, relearn that way of doing things that might have also cascaded into making mistakes on other material in the meantime. So with something like this, as soon as you get, you do problem one, you get that immediate feedback. Hey, that was an incorrect answer. You have multiple attempts, and you can go, check your work, see was the mistake just something like I forgot a negative sign or I typed it in wrong, or was it something that's a more foundational misunderstanding? Correct that, go get problem one right, and then do problems, 2 through 6 and get those correct. And it's a much more efficient system. It's a much better way to learn the material than that, significant amount of time between when you start to complete the homework and when you get the feedback. So that's another big benefit of these systems. So good questions so far. Any other questions on anything? Okay, so let me switch my screens around here a little bit. And then we'll kind of jump into just a short discussion on the more academic side of the course. Okay, so most class days, this is kind of what the setup will look like, from the beginning of class is I'll have some notes or ideas typed up in OneNote, and ask if there are any questions from previous material, anything anybody wants to review, and then we'll jump into the class material. So one thing I like to do is at the beginning of each class meeting, we have a quote of the day, just something that I think either is interesting or maybe helpful uh, for success in the course. And I picked this quote for today because I think it's so foundational to kind of academics, but also just everyday life, the idea of having margin. So this is from P.T. Barnum, the famous circus guy. And, part of the quote is true economy consists in always making the income exceed the outgo. We always want to have a margin in favor of the income. Now, of course, I mean, as students, like financially, that's always a tough thing to do. But I think this quote applies to much more than finances. I think, just having margin generally in life is very important and very helpful. So what does that look like in a course like this as we're going through the course material? Well, that might look like I've already mentioned, if we have say unit 1 exam that is posted on Monday and that's due on Sunday night, if you wait until Sunday evening to start that exam, you leave yourself very little margin, right? If there's anything that goes wrong, if you have no margin, something that would normally become an inconvenience really turns into a catastrophe, right? Something like a computer glitch or something like that, or an internet, outage for a couple hours turns from, well, that's annoying. I guess I'll have to take the test tomorrow to, well, that's pretty terrible. I can't complete the exam now at all. But again, building in a little margin saying, okay, I'm going to plan to take the exam on Thursday evening or Thursday afternoon. Well, if you have that power outage or internet glitch or something, you can either pick up your stuff and go to a local library or something, if that is an option, or you can wait until the next day and until things are kind of fixed and back online. It just becomes an inconvenience. that could also look, we could zoom out a little bit and say, okay, well, say we're coming up to an exam. Should I, if the unit 1 exam is going to be available from Monday through Sunday, should I start thinking about studying for that exam on the Monday that it's available? Or maybe I'll start a few weeks ahead of time, maybe 2 weeks ahead of time, and 2 weeks before exam week, I'll kind of take maybe there's 4 chapters of material on the exam, or maybe there's 12 sections of material, however you want to divide it up. I'll take a chunk of that and kind of start reviewing it 2 weeks ahead of time. And then the week before, I'll take another chunk of material and start reviewing that. And that week before, maybe I'll take the sample exam, see where I'm at on those topics. The week of the exam, maybe I'll do a little bit of extra studying, a little bit of extra remediation, and then jump into the exam, right? If I build in margin like that, and then something happens, that just takes up a lot of my time one of those weeks, I can shift things around quite a bit. If I plan to study all the week of the exam and, something goes wrong and that takes up a lot of my time that week, I don't really have any time to study, right? I'm probably going to perform much more poorly on that exam. And also just kind of like personally, this is something that I see too, that when I leave myself little margin, I tend to be just a lot more stressed, a lot more irritable, a lot less fun to be around. I don't know how fun I am to be around in the first place, but even less so maybe when I don't have margin, right? If I'm leaving my house just in time to get to somewhere I need to be, I tend to be more annoyed, more frustrated with other drivers, more annoyed if I come up to a red light, maybe even more likely to, to speed or something like that. If I leave 5 minutes early, things seem to always just work out a little bit better. So I think that's really the takeaway. And I think it's such an important idea in academics, and especially in these remote courses where it's really easy to kind of lose track of things, just being diligent about making a plan, thinking a couple weeks ahead, and trying to touch base with the material a little bit each day so that you're not crunching everything into a little bit of time. And, in addition to maybe suffering academically, also just kind of suffering emotionally, making yourself stressed out or worried. Um, I think building margin in is super important. And so today's plan was, the main plan was just introductions, reviewing the attendance and enrollment, discussing the course materials. We've gotten through all of that. And now maybe just kind of a short discussion on math and the academic goals of this course. So before we switch gears, are there any questions on anything from the administrative side? Any other questions before we switch gears? Okay. So I think it's maybe a little bit silly that for a lot of these big areas of study, you're studying biology or you're studying mathematics or you're studying economics or whatever. A lot of times folks don't actually give a definition of what the thing is that you're studying in the first place. We kind of feel like we know what math is, but if I said, okay, like give me a 1 sentence explanation of what math is, uh, maybe folks haven't thought about it all that much. So there is kind of this textbook definition. This might be the definition that you would see, if you Google it or something like that. And there's maybe 3 parts to it. That it's a system of logical reasoning. So we have propositional logic. We have things like, if something is true, then something else is true, right? Like, say in a perfect world, like if it's a dog, then it has 4 legs. If it has 2 legs, then it's not a dog. So that's a system of logical reasoning. This is applied to an axiomatic basis. That's just a big fancy word to kind of say, well, we start with assumptions. We say, let's assume that some things work, like 1 + 1 = 2, things like that. That gives us some kind of foundational elements. And from there, we can apply our logical reasoning on top of those foundational elements to kind of build up a structure. Now, importantly, mathematics itself doesn't really care much about this axiomatic basis. It doesn't care what it is. I mean, it probably shouldn't be self-contradictory. I shouldn't have one assumption that negates another assumption. That would be a little bit silly. It would be hard to build logical reasoning on that foundation. But mathematics proper doesn't really care about whether the assumptions you make or the structure that's built, is really helpful in doing something or not, right? Is this going to model finance well, or is it going to model the real world well, or is it going to model nature well? Strictly speaking, we don't care too much about that. But practically speaking, I put the word occasionally in here. Some people might say, primarily or often or something like that. But primarily, we want to model natural phenomena or things that are of interest to us. So typically, we choose our assumptions and the structure that we build on top of those assumptions with some goal in mind, right? If we're studying natural phenomena, if we're studying physics or engineering or the sciences, we want a basis and a structure that helps us to understand those things. But I think more generally, what I would say if somebody asks me, what is mathematics? I would say it's the process of generalization through abstraction. And some of you had kind of mentioned being interested in coding and interested in computer science. And these are really important ideas in computer science as well. In fact, back in the day, back in the maybe 60s or so, there were no like computer science departments. Computer science was a branch of mathematics. So what do I mean by this? Well, I can look at very specific examples of things and how they work. So maybe I have one apple and I have another apple and I push the two together and now I have two apples. So I kind of have this idea that one apple plus one apple equals two apples. But I can see that that same kind of structure works for other things, right? One banana plus one banana equals two bananas, or one car plus one car equals two cars, or one cat plus two cats equals, or one cat plus one cat equals two cats. And I can abstract away from the details. I can say, okay, I see the underlying structure. I don't have to talk specifically about apples or bananas or cars or cats. I can generalize away from that. I can say now 1 plus 1 equals 2. So one thing plus one other thing equals two things, whether those things are apples or bananas or cars or cats or something else. So I've abstracted away, I've uncovered a more foundational structure that underlied that set of examples. I've removed the surface details and I've looked at that underlying structure. And that allows me to generalize. I don't have to make a list of all of the things in the world where one of those things plus another one of those things equals two of them. I can just concatenate all of that into the idea that, say, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now, I feel like a philosopher would probably argue that I'm stealing from philosophy here and, arguing that parts of philosophy are math that maybe they would argue are not math, but I'm sticking to my guns. One of our previous deans was a philosopher. He actually worked in philosophy of science, and we had a couple of discussions about how I view math versus how he viewed math, and so some spirited, fun discussions. But he's not at CCAC anymore. He moved on. Okay, so I think this is an important idea though, because math in some sense kind of looks both directions. In some sense, when we're going through the material in this course and we're talking about how to, multiply fractions or something, that seems very abstract. Why do I care about that? Well, on one hand, I care about it because I can solve more problems with the more abstract version than with the more specific version. But again, like if I understand the abstract version, I can then take that and I can port it over to problems that I haven't seen before, right? What is one orange plus one orange? I know that's two oranges. based on the 1 + 1 = 2 idea. I don't have to investigate oranges separately. I know that structure applies to those, so I know that that's a true statement about oranges as well, even though I haven't used that example yet. Kind of roughly speaking, I like to think that, if I have, say, a space of a certain type of problem, and if I get really good at solving this one problem, but don't dig any deeper, I'm only really good at solving that one kind of problem. As soon as I go away from that problem type, my ability to solve a slightly different problem goes to 0 because I'm only good at that one problem. But if I dig deeper, if I look at the underlying structure, I'm still good at solving that problem. But if I go a little bit away, if I have problems that are pretty similar to that one, I'm actually going to still be pretty good at solving those problems. Maybe not quite as good as the original problem, but I can use the structure that I've uncovered and take that knowledge to other areas, and it's more portable. And even if I get a problem that's kind of far away, I might have some ideas that I could use to maybe attack those problems. So I think this is really the power of mathematics, is it's instead of looking at the surface level all the time, we try to dig deeper, uncover deeper foundational ideas that end up relating a lot more things and allow us to solve a lot more problems more easily. And a quick little note about applied versus pure math. Pure math is sometimes also called theoretical math. The applied mathematician is kind of always has their eye to that surface level. They're always thinking, okay, I want to develop something in this underlying structure to solve a particular problem. And the pure mathematician or the theoretical mathematician says, I want to develop some of this underlying structure simply because I find it interesting to develop this. Maybe sometime later on, somebody will come up with a use for that, but the pure mathematician isn't interested in the use. But it actually happens more than we might expect, that a pure mathematician just develops some tool or some idea. They don't have a use in mind for it, and 20 years later, somebody comes up with a problem. It's a very real world problem they need to solve. And hey, that tool that pure mathematician made with no goal in mind ends up being the perfect tool to use to solve this. One great example is, I think somebody was looking at going into cybersecurity. So the encryption method we use for most things today is RSA cryptography, or a variant of that. Maybe with quantum computers, that's becoming a little less secure. That's a whole other discussion, but the idea of RSA cryptography that keeps your account safe, your identity from getting stolen, your money from getting stolen, that's all based on what was at one point pure math that was very theoretical. It's based on things like abstract algebra and number theory, which is very far into that kind of abstract foundational ideas. But when some folks wanted to solve a very specific, very practical problem, they found that, hey, these tools are exactly the tools that I need to solve this very practical problem that has a lot of practical implications. So we're going to be studying the underlying framework mostly in this course. We will have an eye to how we can directly solve real world problems, but we're going to be studying that underlying framework more. And if you ever are thinking to yourself, oh, this seems dry or this seems silly to study this stuff, just keep in mind that really what we're doing is we're building up our toolbox so that we can have more tools to apply to real world problems. I think we'll talk a little more about these 3 points next time and then move into chapter 1. So we're about out of time for today. Let me stop the recording.